happy to be sharing with you some information about NLP and outcomes and learning how to live on purpose in life. And I'm just wondering whether you feel you do live on purpose or whether you are at or feeling in effect of random events. Do you pick and choose what you do, when you do, and how you do, or do you just let things happen to you? So in this webinar, just briefly, in terms of setting it up a little bit, everybody's on mute. There's the Q&A box. If people want to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer as we go on. These webinars are all recorded, so they'll be available for you on my website, jacqui.abboud.com. And I'm very happy to share that with you. And actually, all the other webinars are there as well. In this instance, we'll be going maybe half an hour, a little bit longer perhaps, and I'm talking today about outcomes. And we're still early on in the year. It's just February, February the 2nd, so it's still early on in the year. I'm wondering whether how you're tracking with your New Year's resolutions. Most people are really excited at the beginning of the new year and, set some objectives and goals for themselves for the year and are really hyped up and raring to go. And then what statistics show is about maybe 3 weeks into the new year, most people, 80 to 90% in fact, despite good intentions, are sort of fallen off the bandwagon, so to speak, and have their resolutions have been derailed. So what is it that keeps people going? What is it that drives, provides the inspiration and the energy and the juice to keep people going in terms of achieving their outcomes and achieving their objectives and goals and so on? And what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about that in this webinar. So the first thing I really want to cover very briefly with you is NLP and what that is. And I've got just a slide here to quickly show you NLP. What does it really mean? So it's an understanding, it's a discipline that focuses on understanding the processes of how we use our mind and the language of our mind to create our reality. So neuro refers to nervous system, how we use language and non-verbal language, and the programming refers to the patterns of behaviours, the strategies that we use in daily life. We have a strategy for everything, a strategy for how we make decisions, how we create, how we go to work, what we do when we cook, and so on. There's strategies, we use strategies for everything. So with this understanding that NLP provides, we can actually learn to use those processes to change some of those patterns and behaviours that we're not, that are not resourceful for us, the things that we really want to, or we can create new patterns and behaviours to help us have the life and the choices that we want to have. So this is the communication model that sort of underpins a lot of the understanding behind NLP. And basically what we do is we take in information from the environment and we filter that information. So in our environment at any one point, our nervous system is bombarded with something like 2 billion bits of information per second. And that's, if we were open to taking all that in, it would really overwhelm our nervous system. So we have filtering mechanisms that delete, distort and generalize that information. So we pick and choose what we allow into our system and what doesn't come into our system. So in this case, our senses are the first layer or the first level of filtering that occurs. We take in information obviously through our senses. And then internally in our mind, we have programs and we have, filters in place that, again, sort through all that data. And we sort through the information based on, for example, the memories we have or the decisions that we've made, helps us decide or helps us choose or sort through what information we pay attention to and what we don't. You see there are examples of other types of filters, which we're not going to go through today. This model actually has many levels to it, and in our NLP training, we spend quite a bit of time understanding each of the different levels. But for our purposes here, an overview will be really good just to help you find the lay of the land or understand the lay of the land. Internally then, after we process all that information, we create an internal representation or our thinking processes, what we see, hear, think and feel. And then based on that, we have an emotion or a mood that we develop, and that influences our physiology and how we hold our body. And that in turn, our state impacts the language or how we behave in the world and how we respond to people in the world. Our maps are very important. The maps we develop internally as a result of all this filtering in our mind is really important, because our map influences how we behave in the world and how we move through the world. It influences what we see, what opportunities we take advantage of. It influences our experiences and how we handle our experiences. And basically, everybody has their own different internal map, which sort of, I guess, explains in turn why everybody is different. Everybody has a different map. Everybody behaves differently as a consequence of their map. It's because we all filter information differently. We all take in different types of information. Now, what really determines what we focus on, and I guess from a neurological perspective, we have the reticulated formation, which is this green bit down here. This system actually in our nervous system, this part of the nervous system here, that helps sort our information as well. It helps program, I guess, our mind, part of it. Our mind actually programs it to sort through information and again filter information. So our unconscious mind does that. And it's basically a process of how it sorts information, reduces the amount of data that comes in so we can actually manage it. What actually programs this really is our unconscious mind or our cells. We actually have the unconscious mind, things that we're not paying awareness or attention to, and we have our conscious attention, things that we pay attention to in the moment and what we're aware of moment to moment. And so our conscious mind, what we're aware of moment to moment, acts like the captain of our ship. It actually guides and directs what the unconscious mind pays attention to. And the unconscious mind is the part of the mind, I guess, that handles everything that's outside of our awareness, like our breathing, our blinking. Can you imagine what it would be like if you had to sort of remember when to breathe, when to take a breath, or when to blink. And so our unconscious mind looks after all those things. Now, what we consciously program with our conscious mind then is like a direction or an instruction to our unconscious to focus on those things or to create those things. So this goes a lot towards some of the sayings that you might have heard, or what you focus on basically is what you get. And the brain supports that. It will sort and filter all that based on what it's been programmed for. Another saying is energy flows where the attention goes. So something for you to think about really might be, what have you programmed your mind to seek out? What are you creating now in your reality that you have programmed? So when you look at what you have created, it might, if you work back, it gives you some ideas or some thoughts about, well, how did I program that? How did I create that? What we're going to do is look at some processes that NLP focuses on in terms of understanding how we create our outcomes, and and what it actually is about. So in terms of understanding how we create our outcomes, NLP and the founders of NLP have done a lot of work uh, to understand how that all happens. And you would have heard previously that they have modelled excellent communicators to identify how they actually went about communicating really effectively and achieving their outcomes. So the people they modelled, for example, one was Milton Erickson, or Virginia Satir is another. And they sat with these people and they looked at their process. How were they able to get such excellent outcomes with their clients? And they worked back from that. They broke down their observations to actually distill and find out what is it that they do that makes them so brilliant in how they relate to people and how they get their outcome. So communication mastery, and these people were masters of communication. There are fundamental areas, and in some people call these, the foundational pieces of NLP. And the critical first one is, in when you're communicating, to know your outcome. And this is whether you're communicating with other people in whatever type of relationship. But even if you want to know something for yourself, or you want to achieve something for yourself, you have to be very clear on what it is you want for yourself. For example, most people are very clear on what they don't want, but not very clear on what they do want. So knowing your outcome and determining that and getting very clear on that is a real critical. It might seem simple, and it is simple, but it's not necessarily easy, because people don't really understand how to go around about doing that in a very succinct, clear way, where they, in effect, program their unconscious mind to help them achieve what they do want to have in their life. The other thing around excellent communicators is they have great sensory acuity. They're very observant of everything that goes on around them, so they know very clearly, and their attention is outward focused, and very clearly they can determine whether they're on track or off track in terms of achieving their outcome, for example, and they use that feedback. And because they have great flexibility, great behavioural flexibility, they're able to change what they're doing in the instant and be very responsive rather than reactive, responsive to events, so that they can change what they're doing and modify their path to get closer and closer towards achieving what they want to do, and have their outcome and realize their outcome. And they're very good at taking action. It's great to know what you want and to observe, but if you don't act on it, it ain't going to happen. So acting on what you want is really critical, and taking action now is very important. Underpinning all these aspects, great communicators are also able to build rapport. They have brilliant rapport, deep levels of rapport with people that they communicate and work with. And very importantly, they have a deep level of rapport with themselves. So they understand themselves really, really well. And they understand what drives them, what makes them tick, what gets them out of bed in the morning. In terms of outcomes, there's an NLP model for change. And in essence, when we set an outcome, we become aware that there is something that missing, that there's something we want in our lives that we don't have at the moment. So they know there's a difference between what's going on and what they want to have. So they understand, or they know what their present state is, and their desired state becomes the outcome that they want to achieve. Most problems that a person has can't really be solved until you have an outcome, until you know what it is that you want to have instead. So that, if you have a poor relationship with your partner, for example, you could focus on, what's all the things that are going wrong, or alternatively, you might focus on, what type of relationship do I want instead? How do I want it to be um, different to how it is now? If you're not communicating very well or relating very well, how can you actually change that? And in moving from the present state to desired state or outcome is a change process, really. It's a change, a transformation, it's understanding what is it that's blocking you and letting that go. To really make that journey across the bridge successful, there's a few questions you might consider asking yourself. What is it that you're moving toward? Is it better health? Is it a career move, maybe, or a promotion, a job? Is it more abundance, more finance, more money that you want to have? What is it that you're moving towards? What is it that you want? And then critically, why? Why are you making that move? What's important to you about that? What is driving you? What are the values underpinning that outcome? Why? Why are you moving? And then you might focus on how you get there, what strategy you want to use, and what you might do if things go wrong. Really, most people will jump straight into a strategy and try and do all these different things to actually get their actual outcome. The majority of people, we actually use a different approach to really achieving outcomes. And one is, this approach is based on doing a lot of things. So people are very action oriented. They will jump in straight away with plans and want to do and have to-do lists and develop goals and New Year's resolution type of things. And they put a lot of pressure on themselves and say, I've got to really do and act right now. And they work really hard, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves to do. There's a belief underpinning, when I work really, really hard, then I can get the things that I want to have, whether it's a great house or whether it's a new car or a trip, a holiday overseas. It could be any of those things. It's a great relationship. I want to have children, health and fitness. I want to have all of that. So they believe if they work really, really hard, then they can have all those things. And then when they have all those things, then they can be happy. So there's a misnomer there, a misunderstanding about pathways to happiness based on doing a lot, then have a lot, and then you can be happy. But it's a different sort of thing. With this sort of model where you work really hard and put a lot of pressure on yourself and you're trying to work harder, you're not getting, let's say you're not getting that career promotion or the recognition that you want, then you work even harder and hours, instead of 38 hours a week, you end up working 60 hours a week, and you're still looking for that recognition and that acknowledgement. And you still, because ultimately on some level you believe that will make you happy, and that when you get that promotion, then you can be happy. And unfortunately for many people, this is sort of like a misguided approach in many ways. It's not that our intentions are absolutely very positive, but we believe this is the way to do it. This is the pathway to success and happiness. And unfortunately for a lot of people, it doesn't work that way, because by the time they do get that promotion, they find out, oh, well, that's not really what I wanted. I actually really, don't want to work in the law. I'd much rather be a florist, for example. And so because they're not really fully aligned with who they are and what makes them really happy, they actually end up in a real action-oriented pathway, which is almost like a negative cycle. What if we looked at it in a different way? What if we looked at creating a different approach where we focus, or where we come in all our actions, we come from a different space of who we are as human beings. Instead of being a human doing, we become a human being, where we understand who we are in our own self. Um, what if it would be like? What would it be like for you if you were really clear about who you are and what's important to you, and then made choices from that space? So really get grounded and very strong in your sense of self and what makes you happy and what's important to you in life. So sometimes if you look at it from a whole life point of view, that can be a bit overwhelming. But if we're looking at it in terms of a particular area, say health or relationship or even career, so what's important to you about the work that you do, and really understand what it means to you to be successful at work, for example. And then once you get grounded in that, making choices then about the actions that you take that will reflect that sense of who you are and that sense of what's important to you, your values, your purpose, your mission and your drive. And then from there, taking those actions, then you will always have an outcome. No matter what action you take, you'll have an outcome. The difference in this case is that the outcome you have will be a reflection of what you truly want and what is truly valuable and important to you. And if you get an outcome that you don't like, you can actually reevaluate that. That's when you have a look again at who you are. Is this close to who I am? Does this reflect how I want to be and how I want to move through the world? Does it, for example, if we go to the lawyer florist example again, does arranging flowers mean more to me? Does it help me be happy? Does it help me live my values, which might be around making other people happy? And does it align with that? And if not, then I can change that again. So you always move through this process of whatever outcomes you set for yourself, understanding whether they're a reflection of your purpose in life, of your aim, of your objective. So moving through this cycle is very different to the previous one, where it came from a space of doing all the time, getting all those things, and then believing that might make you happy. Mostly it doesn't, because people are not, their actions are not flowing from who they are. They could be acting on, my parents believed I need to be a doctor, and that's why I studied to become a doctor, instead of does being a doctor, does being in the field of medicine reflect my own values or not. So coming back to who you are and moving out from that space initially all the time is really important to creating a pathway to happiness and success. And a lot of, again, those people who are really good at what they do and are very successful and have good balanced lives are doing it because they're on purpose. They're living their life on purpose. They're acting from purpose. They're creating their goals from that purpose of knowing and how they want to be. So being a human being, just being. So questions to ask yourself to develop that authenticity and to make that conscious for you. Who am I? What am I passionate about? Who do I want to be in the world? And then what's important to me about that? What turns me on? What turns me off? What keeps me going? And what am I capable of? What I really want? So these are questions to really ask yourself and reflect on. And I'd really encourage you to go back to this webinar and have a really good listen of it again. You might want to do it a couple of times and reflect on these sort of questions to really develop a strong sense of who you want to be and how you want to be in the world. So it could be, let's say, in the area of relationships, that you want, maybe you don't have a good relationship at the moment, or you just don't have any deep, intimate relationship at the moment, and that's something that you'd like. You'd set yourself that as an outcome. And then you would go ahead and close your eyes for a minute and really imagine for yourself, how would you be as a person when you've already achieved and have that loving, deeply intimate relationship that you want to have? How would you be? How will you be as a person? If that was no longer a concern for you, that you've already had one, and it's very successful and very fulfilling, how would you be then as a person? And sometimes, you think, would you be deeply contented, feeling a deep sense of joy and happiness, maybe peacefulness? Would you be a person who is generous and loving and sharing and um, uh, what sort of person would you be? And that's different for different people. I just guess maybe some examples of what that would be for me, but or what that is for me. How would that be for you? So how would you be as a person? And sometimes some people might find it difficult working that out. So I would really encourage you to pretend and act as if. What if? And let your mind be free and imagine and just pretend what it would be like. And really, this is your mind and this presupposition and NLP around, the person, you are in charge of your mind and you can make it happen. So when we program our mind with these thoughts and with this type of energy, it's very likely that our reticular activating system, which we spoke about earlier, will then start sorting and filtering information that comes into your system from the outside in a way that it looks for those things that you're programming into your mind. So when you focus on pretending as if, or maybe you don't even have to pretend, maybe you've had wonderful relationships and you can bring all those thoughts and feelings and pictures and images and sounds and words and everything that describes that, and reinforce that in your system now, so that your RAS, your reticular activating system, will start looking for that in your external environment, and then you will attract that more and more into your life. So this is one suggestion for you, is when you do this exercise, draw a symbol that represents that for you. Make a beautiful white image of whatever that is for you. You can use words, use descriptive sensory words, and make that really strong and create an anchor for yourself of how you would be as a person. Confidence might be in there. It could be anything that you want, and you can build it all in. And that image or that word, that symbol can become an anchor for you to recall that whenever you want. So setting outcomes, understanding, creating outcome orientation in your life, it's all about being who you are and being more and more of who you are. And it's that journey to self that continues to evolve and grow. So we focus quite a lot on being, and then now is the time to take action, to do. Now is the doing part. And I don't really need to talk to you very much about the doing part, because I'm sure you guys are experts at the doing. And this is all that planning stuff that we do. It's setting those smart goals. It's designing the goals and being very specific, for instance, about them. And I'm not going to talk to you about smart goals. You probably know quite a lot about them, but it's that sort of process. This is when you start doing that. And then you take a little action, one small action at a time, in the direction to achieve these, to implement these plans that you're actually planning. And once you do that, you get to this state where you now have what it is that you want to have in your life, whatever success means to you in whatever area. And this point, you're creating an authentic life for yourself, because you're coming from this space of, this is what's important to me, and this is how I'm living and moving through the world. So knowing that it's the authenticity really is not just a word, it's a live, dynamic action that continually evolves. And at this point too, you're looking at, okay, you have an outcome based on the, on whatever your aim and your purpose is and the action that you've taken. Consequently, you have an outcome, and then you look at that and think, okay, it's good. This is what it is. It might be a tangible thing. It might be a feeling or an emotion. Think, yeah, I'm really happy. This is what it is, and you just keep doing what you're doing to get to create what you have. And if it's something that you're not happy with, you obviously can reevaluate and you'll change it. But you always go back to that space of who am I, and what is it that's driving that change? Why is that important? What does it mean to you? And then you just keep going and creating that sense of satisfaction. In many respects, those three areas, the aim, which is the B, the overall aim and purpose for your life, there's some words there that describe it. That's the big picture. That's the overall plan of how you want to be in the world, and becoming really clear on that is so valuable and so critical, because it underpins the support and the achievement of every action that you take, and obviously the outcome, which is the end result of that step. So go to the be, do, have, way. That's what I proposed for you, and that's a never-ending process. In NLP, certainly in my trainings, there's different, people focus on outcome setting and creating outcomes in different ways. And I have a wonderful process which is using the word prosper, and it looks and integrates all these various aspects into one process. And critically, not only does it meet it goes beyond SMART. It grounds it in who you are and how you want to be and move through the world. And there's a real consideration for ecology, which is, how does me achieving this outcome we're working towards it, how does it affect everybody else? And that's a real important part as well, is understanding how your outcomes influence the system that you work with, and vice versa, how the system impacts on you as well. So we spend some time doing that. Really important to look at outcomes in all areas of your life, and to integrate it and work with them and have actions for each one of them. And these are some areas here. This map here of life areas is sort of comes from cognitive psychology, in many areas of life, and really valuable to create outcomes or in each of those. I mean, you're already creating outcomes, but you want to be clear on whether they're the outcomes that you want to have or not, and then go back through that process of grounding who you are. You might choose to work on possibly one area at a time. It might become too overwhelming otherwise. And you would choose the area that is most relevant for you at the moment. So it might be, career is really important for you, and then you would start that process there. And when you start thinking about it in that, and going through these processes, you start training your unconscious mind to do this in other areas as well. So sort of like it's a very generative process. This idea and coming from that overall principle of who you are and how you want to be. So that nearly comes to the end of our time together, and to finish off, what I'd really like to do is tell you a little story about a journey. And when we think about our life, we can think about it as sort of one continuous journey. So once upon a time, a while ago, there was a loving couple, and this couple lived together and they did everything together. And they had the blessing of having achieved most of their outcomes, most of their ambitions in life they had already achieved. There was still one goal that was still outstanding. They actually wanted to swim to Japan. And they had thought about this goal for a very long time. And one day, the time was right, and they said, Now, they weren't used to swimming, so they found it, the going was tough. In the beginning, it was a bit difficult. They were very aware of how heavy their arms and legs started to feel. They ached with that constant effort, especially when the current was against them. I don't know if you can imagine if you've ever swam against the current, how that can feel. Gradually, little by little, their bodies became used to swimming, and they developed this style. They just an expression of themselves, a style that's just effortless and rhythmical. And it took a little time, and they got there. They got to this space of just being almost one with the water. And in that space, they started to notice the water around them. They noticed the colour. As the days went by, they saw in the early mornings a lovely, lovely clear blue with certain lights that sort of sparkled and rippled in the waves. And it was just a lovely, beautiful colour. And certain lights, it was green, different shades of green, light green and emerald green. And then the sunset had this rich, warm tones of colours. And really, really excitingly almost, as they swam, they became aware of all the creatures in the water as well. Those small, tiny silver fish darting about them as they swam. Dark shadows that skimmed the depths as they just swam beautifully across the ocean top. They became aware also of the sounds of the waves, how it changed. The water lapped against their bodies and against the reefs, and they felt the subtle changes of the weather as the breezes turned to winds and gradually died down again. They learned how to find food in the water, how to nourish themselves, how to use their bodies effortlessly, easily, just in the natural rhythm and the natural flow. They developed a really, really refined sense of smell, so that just on the breeze they could detect small changes in the weather and in the environment around them. And they swam for days, and they swam for weeks. No sight of land, and they swam. And one day, just in the distance, they saw this really dark profile. But there's land on the horizon. They swam on, and they recognised even further the shoreline of Japan. And there was an excitement. And as they approached closer and closer, they became quiet. And eventually they looked at each other, and they knew in that moment they turned back to the sea and swam on. So very much, it's as much about the journey as it is about the destination. Be who you are, everyone else is taken. This is one of the a lovely quote by Oscar Wilde that I found and that I come back to again and again. It's so important to just be who you are. And that's an evolving thing. There's no end point, but it's a beautiful, wonderful journey to undertake. Some would say probably one of the most important journeys we ever will. So I want to thank you for joining me for this webinar, and hopefully there are things there for you to take away. Remember, they're all available on my website, jacqui@jacquiabboud.com. If you have any questions, please email me. I'll be very happy to hear from you, and wishing you all the best on your journey.